So today we are going to be talking about Salvador Dali, and before we get started, we're going to look at a short little video about some interesting facts about Salvador Dali, and then we're going to take a look at the lesson, and then we're going to also take a look at a movie that he and Walt Disney made together. A little bit of it. We're not going to watch the whole thing, but Salvador Dali is a very complex artist. Most of the artists we've studied up to now dealt with concepts that are fairly easy to explain and understand. Salvador Dali is the father, essentially, of surrealism as an art movement. And while there are lots of surrealist movements, similar to Henri Matisse as the main fauvist, and when we looked at Bridget Riley, as one of the primary optical illusion artists that created those optical illusions. We look at Salvador Dali as really being the seminal artist of the most important artist, really, that begins that surrealist movement. And surrealism was about being super realistic to the point where it was beyond realistic. It was, over the top realistic. So, let's start here, and then we're gonna watch a couple little interesting facts about Salvador Dali. I hate these little things. They're always kind of dumbed down a little bit too much. When you look at what they're talking about here too is sort of how one of the things that that the surrealists did was kind of bringing that three dimensionality, that form, into that two-dimensional space, and we're going to look at how Dali used that intensely. This idea of creating these forms inside this two-dimensional shape. We're going to look at how they use space, and that's kind of what we're talking about. How those surrealists use the principles of design throughout their artwork, and how you're going to use it in yours. Kind of what makes a surrealist work surrealist, and how is it going to be successful to be a surrealistic work of art, and start thinking about how you're going to incorporate those surrealistic ideas into the work of art you'll create for your make day this week. Thinking about how you're going to draw from your own personal inspirations and can communicate ideas about who you are and that sort of thing through your artwork. And we'll talk more about tools and techniques on the make day itself, but we'll look at how you're going to use those tools and techniques, and use those, create those elements of art. So a little bit about Salvador Dali. Born in 1904, he's a Spanish artist. His father was a lawyer. He kind of grew up in a rather wealthy, well-to-do family. So a couple interesting things about Dali. He from a very early age, his parents kind of had some very unique ideas about life. They believed in reincarnation, and that was one of the kind of the seminal ideas that led Salvador into the kind of abstract thought that he was known for having. His mother challenged his father's opinions about becoming an artist and encouraged him. Over time, like all artists, he kind of changes. He starts in one kind of area, ends up in another, experimenting with realism, cubism. Most artists go through that same sort of process. Realism is usually the first step, creating that. To be able to create realism is how you can go beyond that and create things like cubism and surrealism, and that sort of thing. All right. A couple of interesting facts. Let's look at those real quick.
Salvador Dali was a great Spanish artist, an eccentric and imaginative person. Dali is famous for creating a new genre in art, called Surrealism. Salvador Dali was an eccentric and imaginative person. Here are some interesting facts about Salvador Dali. 1. As a young boy of 5 years, his parents took him to the grave of his older brother. They told him that he was the reincarnation of his brother, a theory he would believe in. 2. As a child, he was frequently expelled from school. 3. Salvador had an intense fear of insects, especially grasshoppers, female body, and assassination. 4. When in public, he would jump up and down to get attention. 5. He was notorious for not knowing how to count money. 6. Once, Dali came to a social event, in a diving suit. 7. His nickname was Avida Dollars. Roughly translated, it means, eager for dollars. 8. First appeared in New York, Salvador Dali carried a 2-meter long loaf of bread. 9. Dali worked with Walt Disney. The two men became lifelong friends, and made a cartoon together. 10. For his wife Gala, Dali purchased a castle. She would often stay there by herself, unless Dali had been given special permission to join her. 11. When Dali came to Paris, the first thing he did was visiting Picasso. Dali was very excited and full of respect, like he was going to visit the Pope.
Pablo, I didn't even go to Louvre. I came to see you first. You did the right thing, Salvador.
11. Dali's painting, The Persistence of Memory, was inspired by a piece of cheese melting from the heat. 13. After dinner in a restaurant, Dali paid not in cash, but wrote out checks. Usually, the owners did not dare cash the check, believing it would become very expensive. So, Dali could eat for free. 14. Salvador Dali gave the world-famous logo for Chupa Chups. It took him only 1 hour, and he did not take money for this. He asked to bring him a box of candy every day.
All right, so a unique individual, to say the least, and some of those interesting facts are probably diagnosable mental health conditions that had he lived in a time, a day, and age, and era that was more accepted of mental health. Um, he would have maybe sought some treatment and been diagnosed at some point. We're going to look real quick at a scene from Destino. This is a movie that he and Walt Disney created together, and it kind of gives you an insight again into how that surrealism uh, was kind of introduced into the mainstream. Again, Walt Disney can't you can't get more mainstream than Disney.
My heart was sad and lonely, and knowing that you only could bring my love to me. Destino, this heart of mine is real now. My empty arms are filled now, as they were meant to be. For you came out.
And so one of the things that was common in that surrealistic movement, and we saw it there, was that idea of things sort of melting or these dream-like qualities, and you kind of got the feeling that that girl's in a dream almost when the person kind of melts away into that sculpture, and little butterflies fly out. That is definitely Salvador Dali's contribution. That's the type of thing that he contributed with these surrealistic ideas beyond the real. All right. Inspired by the Dada movement, Surrealism was an art movement that swept through France and Belgium beginning in the 1920s. Later spread to countries around the world to create surrealistic artworks. Many artists use a technique called Automatism, automatism, excuse me. And automatism didn't just apply um, in art, visual art. There were dancers who thought that there were at the time that this kind of abstract thought moved into abstract, and there were surrealistic dancers. If you look at the work of Martha Graham, she created these really weird, unique, surrealistic dances, and we'll look at one of her pieces before this lesson is over. Um, so the idea of this automatism is when you have actions and instincts over your thoughts and ideas. So something kind of takes over, if you will, and these are kind of thought to come from your subconscious. Polychromatic working in single colors, monochromatic colors, um, kind of staying in those very often those called analogous colors, those colors that are right next to each other on the color wheel, if you will. Um, that was a common trait. We see lots of oranges, yellows, reds in this. You know, there's a little bit of blue, but for the most part, it stays in that sort of very basic color range. You know, it's got the full range, if you will, but um, it wasn't an exploration of bright colors like we saw with the Fauvist or with the pop artist, that sort of thing. Monochromatic, it was a common theme. Again, very, very limited use of that color to the point where you're only using um, those grayed out, very muted aspects of those hues. He had a lot of contemporaries, a lot of other artists that were working on the surrealistic movement. We're going to take a look at a few of those real quick. Scirocco was influenced by a lot of artists, including Dali. Well known for using perspective lines in his artwork. And you can see these kind of lines moving back into space. Again, a lot of surrealistic artists use these. They have objects that seem unrelated being used together. Sometimes they would have what we call displacement, putting something where it absolutely doesn't belong. Marguerite was an artist known for incorporating symbolism. Symbolism was another big aspect of of surrealism. If you look at the art of um, Frida Kahlo used a lot of symbolism. She'd been in a lot of pain, and a lot of her works of art um, show that pain. Oh, I'm gonna go back and look at those other artists. Didn't finish them all. Sorry. Moreau was another big one. Moreau created sculptures, a lot of sculptures. And Moreau used, this three-dimensional space in a very surrealistic way, creating these crazy, wild things that, where most surrealistic artists created these three-dimensional forms, if you will, in that two-dimensional space. Now he was full 3D, very often incorporating these bright use of colors, and again, still using some of that. Displacement. The sculptors might use things that really didn't look like they belong. And I think it's Tangray. It's how it was pronounced in art school, but I don't know. This is honestly not one we studied a lot. Inspired by nature, sort of similar to um, Goldsworthy, a lot of organic shaped rock surfaces, and again using that sort of melting away, that dreamlike aspect of the subconscious being incorporated. And finally, Man Ray, uh, these photographs, he would use photographs, but often kind of break them up, cut them up, combine them in ways that um, might be kind of easy and quick and easy to do using modern applications like Photoshop and that sort of thing. But he was pre-Photoshop. All his stuff was done by hand. Oh, So, artists that he worked with for your attendance question answers of the day. First, you need to know that Walt Disney is who he worked with to create Destino. Destino is this movie that we watched, and Walt Disney is who he worked with. That's going to be your first attendance answer of the day. And the second is coming up. I think we've already mentioned it once, but we're going to talk about it again in just a second. One of the best ways to understand Dali's work is traveling inside his surreal dream world, understanding the thoughts as he traveled through his subconscious mind. And so, by visiting his museum, and a couple of interesting things about his museum, he's one of these people who believed, again, that art was outside the realm of what we sort of the normal construct that we think of. That art was very abstract to the point where it was beyond real. And so that would mean his particular gallery would also have to sort of be beyond real. Uh, so, um, uh, so again, he was born in Spain, and that's where you'll find his museum. Um, Even the shapes on the outside are representative of some of those images that he created. This is the actual building. This is a painting of his, so you can see how it is directly representative of some of the work he created. He liked to use these again three-dimensional forms in this two-dimensional space, and we see those brought out into the real world. He also liked to use a lot of specific symbols. Eggs we often associate to life, birth, that sort of thing. He had a really crazy, weird movie where he would be born out of an egg, and again, he was a very outside the egg thinker, we'll say. He liked to use elephants, angels, eggs, those three-dimensional ovals, even when they weren't eggs. Sometimes he would incorporate that sort of oval shape. He had this dreamy, abstract quality in his paintings. A lot of these were inspired by the desert where he would visit with his family. This was, I think, these were actually inspired by melting cheese. This is persistence of time. Persistence of time. I am going to have to put that in the chat somewhere. But that is going to be your second attendance question of the day. The persistence of time. So persistence of time is his most famous painting, the most famous painting that you are most likely aware of that he did. If you see melting clocks, you go, "Oh, that's Dali. He did the melting clocks." Persistence of time. He frequently made art inspired by everyday objects like clocks, abstract in different ways. Clocks are look like they're melting. I used a lot of single point perspective, which is sort of a lost art, really, if you will. If you look at the way that the feet being drawn, this was actually more reminiscent of what some of the early Renaissance artists did when they were starting to figure out that single point perspective. This is a sculpture. Wooden bust has those surreal images and qualities to it. Um, yeah, so this has the soft lines and no hard lines. It actually looks like it could be made of stone. This over here obviously looks like it's very soft clouds and that sort of thing. Oh, oh, I hate when I do that. Just go right back to where I was. Nope. Oh goodness. All right, we've already talked about the start first part of your um, attendance answer. So let's right here. I mean your make day. Sorry. So just to review real quick, first two attendance answers. Uh, Dolly, worked with Walt Disney to create Destino. Dolly worked with Walt Disney to create Destino. That's your first attendance answer. And the second was Persistence of Time is the name of that melty clock painting he's so famous for. All right. We're gonna skip the little how much did we learn, and we're gonna talk a little bit about your studio time and how you can start sketching and creating ideas. You're gonna start drawing from your own personal experience and start imagining some type of dream world where you're creating some unique space, maybe an environment, and something that's abstracting some cool symbols that represent something going on in your life. Or again, where he abstracted clocks, and clocks might have been about the passage of time in life, and life that is often represented by clocks and things that show passage of time, hourglasses, that sort of thing. And even the melting kind of brings in that idea of time. We think about if you have a block of ice as it melts away, it's only a certain amount of time until that block of ice melts away completely. Incorporating animals was a big thing. Creating these unique environments, these strange lands. So, as you think about what you might create for your work of art this for next week, or for this week, I should say, and for our next meeting, think about how you can incorporate some of those ideas, those symbolism, things that mean something to you specifically. That's another student might look at and go, "I wonder what that means," because definitely when we look at his work, we're often kind of left and it's expected. It's kind of what he's wanting. He wants you to look at it and go, what's going on here? And maybe apply what you understand to it. All right. So and lots of details. Look at all the little details going on. And again, in each of those little details and all those little things, it gives the viewer something to not just look at, but discover and to again apply their own interpretations on. As you think about what you're going to incorporate, think about including abstracted objects, organic shapes, dreamlike qualities, some types of symbolism. Think about how you'll use color. If you're going to use a polychromatic color, keep it muted. If you're going to use monochromatic, keep it muted. And we're not going to look at those real bright primary and secondary colors that we've seen in other works. Again, think about how you're going to create lots of details. Think about all the little how each of the details could be more than one thing. Very often, when we start looking at what is created, when artists would often create trees made of feathers, and that's what it is. That's what these guys here wings that create a tree. And so, even as you create the details of leaves in a tree, or let's say the tiles on a roof, or the fingers on a hand, maybe those individual things could also become something else. All right. Think about how you're using line, color, texture, of course. And unity, one of the ways we think about creating unity is that use of color. We see that muted color. If they had a bright, glowing yellow here, that would really stand out like a sore thumb. Even this little tiny bright orange there becomes that focal point, really, and really draws our attention. It and sort of the high detail here, because everything else is around it is everything else is sort of muted in color and kind of faded, so it looks to almost kind of move away from us, where those bright things sort of pop towards us a little bit. Variety, again, think about how you can use the repeated imagery, but vary size, vary color, vary texture, that sort of thing. Repeating it over, but making it different each time you repeat it. Those are all different elements that you can bring into your work of art. Last but not least, think about how you can bring in those animal aspects, and then how you might combine those with human aspects, so that they almost take on human characteristics. That's a big part of creating that dream life. Last thing we're going to do is look at the artist, and this is your last attendance question. And who is the surreal dancer? It's Martha Graham, and we are going to look at a Martha Graham dance. This is the last attendance question of the lesson. So once you see it, if you duck out of here, I understand. And we're the one lamentation is the dance that is probably most representative of this idea of the abstract dance and surrealistic dance. Now, Martha here is not only doing these surrealistic types of movements, she's responding to other artists that were working at the time, Cubist. You can kind of see elements of Pablo Picasso's work in the shapes that she creates as she creates this dance. This is a ballet. I know what you're thinking. This doesn't look like a traditional ballet, and it certainly isn't traditional. It's a very unique, um, surrealistic sort of ballet, Lamentation by Martha Graham. That is your last attendance question of the day. All right, guys. I look forward to seeing you on the make day. We're going to make some cool, funky art. So think about something dreamlike, something a little outside the realm of normal, and hopefully have fun making some crazy make day stuff this week. See ya.